morning. Just a quick housekeeping rule. Some of these videos actually wind up being truncated and posted. So make sure that whatever you're doing on the screen is something you don't mind seeing 100 times on YouTube, like me, or mortified finding out on Facebook that you're live. Anyhow, okay, so why don't we quick hop over to Pam. Pam, why don't you give us like a 5-minute hello and update from the board, and then we'll go right over to Mrs. Van Glan.
Sure. Okay. At our last board meeting, we presented the strategic plan. And I think that the strategic plan is available on the website at middletownak12.org, and you can follow along with it and read along. Basically, it's the culmination of all of those great forums that we had and the input from the survey. We had 2,700 people fill out a survey, and we have all of the data from that on Middletown K-12, so you can also look at that, and you can see how the data from the survey and from all those meetings propelled us into this strategic plan that we presented the other night. And so basically, it's very kind of simple statements of how we want the next 5 years to go in reference to our special education, in reference to long-range planning, and all of that. We did hire a demographer because I know a lot of people are interested in the long-range planning component of this. We did hire a demographer. They have extensive experience in redistricting, in consolidation, in things of that sort. So we just want to make sure the public knows that we did hear them. The number one concern of our public is decreasing class size district-wide, and we know that and we understand that, and we have hired a demographer with that in mind. The demographer will do the work over the summer and should have multiple plans to present to us in September, and by us I mean the entire public. We'll get to see, you know, maybe 4 or 5 plans of what they think that we should do to alleviate our overcrowding in certain schools and make sure that we even out and distribute evenly our student body so that all the kids can enjoy lower class sizes, because that was the #1 need of the district. So they'll do their work over the summer. We'll present 3 or 4 different plans in September at one of our public meetings. And then from there, once the public has spoken and we've heard the public and their opinion on the plans, we'll pick one plan and we'll go with that plan. And then by September of 2021, we should be able to implement something to make positive change in the community. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. No?
Yeah, no, I'm checking the chat and I don't see anything. So, okay, so
Okay.
that's, all right, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Pam, thank you so much. Have fun.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, and Mrs. Van Glan, if you want to pick it up and talk about summer reading?
I don't know if she's here yet, Margie. I know she was doing interviews this morning, so she might be finishing up one in between. So well,
okay.
I'll watch to see when she logs on, and I'll let you know.
It looks like she just came in.
Oh, there she is.
Perfect timing.
Yes. Woo.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning.
Hi. So summer reading, yeah. So we are updating, actually the elementary has already been updated. Middle school has been updated. They have been put on the website. High school has been finished. We changed up just a little bit to make sure that students had complete choice and that they just didn't have to look at what was on the current list. The lists all remain pretty much intact the way they were last year, except that we made them completely choice. This was so that we're making sure that we're bringing special ed into consideration, because after collaborating with some of the even middle school teachers, there were some books on there that were just too hard, and we wanted to make sure that parents had some more say in helping kids choose books that are just right for them to be able to read and engage in. Plus, we want them to be motivated. So, you know, the choice is a big deal. In addition to updating and putting all of those summer reading choices up on the district website, which Chris has been helping us do, we have also decided to put some videos up. And currently, the middle school ELA coaches and the high school ELA coaches are working on videos to put on the district website. for just even parents to see and hear how to look at the summer reading, how to motivate students, but just to give them that extra little bit of information to help guide them during this time. And I also have this actually on Thursday, a meeting with the RDTs. There's a handful of them that are also going to do it for the elementary. So we're going to be having a video for parents that they will be able to access on the district website that will explain the summer reading for parents as well. And we've also, I can't forget, Marguerite Stocker has also helped tremendously. She's providing 20% off to our middle school and high school students, and we put links into the lists that we have that students can just click on those. And in the videos, the coaches and everybody will explain that those links are there, and that'll provide parents with a 20% off, plus all the other links that are embedded into those that can take parents to where they can get whatever books their students need, say if they can't get them from the public library. Plus the public library is also, they've asked for our lists, so those lists have also been updated and sent to them. And I think that's it. We are looking at possibly trying, and this is just in the infancy, of getting a book club started at each level this year. If we can start it at least at the middle school and high school, we can see how that goes. I've been in talk with the coaches, and just to see how we can start that, even if I have to regulate that. But we might want to see how we can generate interest to see if kids would be interested in being part of a book club that we do virtually. And those are things. Is there anyone that has any questions? Those are where we are at with summer reading.
Hi, I have a quick question. Regarding the elementary school and actually high school books, but really the elementary. Is there a way that we can expand? I mean, I know you guys have given us a lot of options right now for virtual books because the public library is still closed, and I haven't heard when they might be opening. But currently, so for parents that have readers that read a lot and you go through Hoopla, your library card is only good for 10 books a month. If you have a student that goes beyond that, then you have to kind of figure out a way to either a different avenue to continue in a line of books that a child is interested in, or you have to try to, if you can't find it through a different area, try to figure out if you can get like a second Hoopla account. So is there just some sort of a simpler system for digital books, at least for the elementary school level?
We haven't really vetted that out right now for digital books. I mean, it's something that we're consistently looking into. I know in the high school, we've written new curriculum, and that's something that we're vetting out right now. But it is something that we can take note of and we can explore more. I mean, those things are never off the table. We're always talking about things like that. And always trying to find the best way we can get the most amount of books into kids' hands, especially those voracious readers, right? But I'll take note of that, and it's something that we can keep on the table to discuss.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mrs. Van Glan about summer reading, any of the programs? I don't see anything in the chat window. Again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions going forward and through the meeting. Okay, all right, I think that's it. All right, thank you, Mrs. Van Glan. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Take care. Have a lovely summer. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the changes coming to the elementary school schedule.
So I don't want to rehash all the information that we've provided over the last couple of meetings at President's Council, and there was a quite an extensive discussion and presentation at our board meeting the other night. So I think what I would maybe rather take it as is what questions, start with questions. Maybe that's the better way, because I know there's a lot of information that's been put out there to the district about the changes and why. And I think we talked about it briefly also at our last PIC meeting. About the 6-day rotation schedule. Are there any questions?
Kim, I have a quick question. How is this going to affect instrumental in elementary?
It doesn't. And in fact, what we did hope is we increased the number of teachers at the elementary level to do instrumental music, and that was something that Mr. Graziano had brought to our attention early last year. That was a problem because we were understaffed in that area. So we actually repurposed or we will be rescheduling one of the current general music teachers, who's also an instrumental music teacher, to increase the staff at the elementary level to provide instrumental music lessons. And I think Mr. Graziano, he called me early this morning. I think he said when he figured it out, we actually increased by more than half of the time, that we can service students. Because we know that
so how many teachers and instrumental teachers does that put us at?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Right, because I think we only had, I think, like 3 or 4 to begin with,
I think
right?
it was 3, and then there was like 1 or 2 general music teachers who would pick up a couple sessions here and there. They had availability in their schedule. I know we added a full-time person, a whole full-time person. So I don't know the exact number where that brings us to, but we added an additional full-time instrumental music teacher because we just need it because the numbers, Yeah.
But Kim, real quick, for those of us who don't, for folks who may not have a grammar school child or might have missed could you just give a quick, like 30-second summary of what the change is going to be overall? And I guess, like I said, for folks who may not have grammar school kids who wouldn't know what's happening or what the impact is.
So we've been talking about this really since last year. There were some changes in state mandates and curriculum that went into effect legally. There were some laws that also were enacted as of this year and then starting next year in September. So one of the first things that changed was, you're probably aware, this year in September, the recess law was implemented, which part of the component of the recess law prohibits districts from being able to use recess or teacher-directed physical education to count towards the 150 weekly minutes that are required for health and PE instruction at the K-5 level. Physical education and health are the only subjects in the state of New Jersey that come with a minimum amount of instructional minutes that must be scheduled and implemented during the week. Believe it or not, I know a lot of people always ask me that, well, how many minutes are people supposed to teach reading? How many minutes is there supposed to be math? Health and PE is the only, again, subject where there are actual mandates and requirements. So in the past in Middletown for many years and for many districts, what we were doing is to meet that 150 minutes, districts would schedule anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 formal special subjects in the form of health or physical education with the health and PE teacher. And usually, every district, your specials at the elementary level are about 40 minutes. So in our district, 2 classes a week got us 80 minutes. The other 70 minutes were made up from the allotted time that recess and teacher-directed physical education was occurring every day, which was somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes a day. Well, now that we can't count that other 70 minutes towards the 150-minute weekly requirement, the principals had to figure out how we would capture that time and schedule that time. We did not want to maintain the existing 5-day-a-week special subject schedule. That's how our week was defined for specials for many years. Prior to that, we did have a 6-day-a-week schedule in Middletown. Because in order to do that, if we would have kept the 5-day-a-week schedule, just to get to 150 minutes at 40 minutes a day, 4 out of 5 days would have had to been health and PE scheduled just to get to your 150 minutes. That would have left 1 day a week for all other special subject areas. We did not think that that was realistic nor best for students. So the principals worked over the last couple months to figure out how we would redesign the elementary schedule. What they decided to do, and districts are taking different tacks. I'm sure you've seen in the news, it's been very publicized that some districts are foregoing art and music instruction, or every other year the students get art and music instruction. Some districts have abandoned or they no longer schedule world language instruction the way we do in Middletown. Some neighboring districts have gone to online instruction of American Sign Language once a month with the classroom teacher to fulfill their world language obligation. We did not think that would be best for our students, especially in light of the fact that we think the learning of an actual language, not just for language, and I know Dr. Cartier can speak about this much better than I, she's our resident expert, but we also felt it was important that students learn culture and other nuances of people and their language and their lives and again, their culture. And that's what our world language teachers also teach at the elementary level. So it was decided after many meetings that we would go back to and extend, redefine our week as a 6-day special rotation for elementary. There's gives and takes to that. There's pros and cons. This was not an ideal situation no matter how we came at it. No one was happy with any of the changes. No one was promoting any of this change. It was something that we had to adjust to. So there will be a 6-day schedule next year for specials at the elementary level. 4 out of those 6 days, again, will be health and PE to be able to meet the 150-minute requirement. The other 2 days will be rotating half-year semester courses of art, music, world language, and the other new course that we have to introduce is computer science and digital design. There are new standards that the state is introducing, and we are obligated to teach the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, so we have to implement them starting in September. It's going to be the first time that we have an organized curriculum for computer science instruction at the elementary level. I know we've had a lot of parents, not a lot, but we've had some parents who have come to board meetings or who have written to us and they've asked, why can't the classroom teachers just teach? The kids have technology all around them. We have hyperlinked, I believe, Chris, to our letter to the community, the standards, and it takes you to the state website. If you review those standards the way we have, you'll quickly realize, I think, that these aren't standards that the generalist of an elementary classroom teacher can teach. They are very much rooted in computer engineering, computer design, internet design, coding, software design, algorithms, how the technology works within software programs, online programs. Even at the 5th grade level, students have to show mastery or demonstrate mastery of those understandings. So it's not just typing or keyboarding or using PowerPoint or using Zoom or Google Meet the way maybe we traditionally thought of computer class. It's much more enhanced. It's much more behind the science of it. And that is the state's push for STEM and computer science instruction in preparing students, as best as possible for different college and career pathways they may choose. The other thing is that they are also introducing this year for the first time life skills and career standards all the way down to elementary. So that's also embedded in this course. We will be addressing through the strategic planning process. We did hear pretty repeatedly and consistently that parents were frustrated with the old way that we were introducing and exposing students to technology and computer science and coding, and that it was inconsistent depending on your teacher. We also heard that it was inconsistent whether or not students were receiving any formalized time or dedicated time for typing, learning typing skills, which we know are important. So all of that has been considered and will be included and captured in this course throughout the 6 years that students are introduced to it. Obviously, at the K1 and 2 level, it's going to look very different than at the 3, 4, 5 level. The skills, the standards become much more enhanced as the students progress through the grades. They become a little bit more rigorous. Obviously, you're not introducing kindergartners to algorithms and computer engineering. Although, at a basic level, you can start developing their understanding of that. So that is the change to the specials and the reason for the changes to the specials. The directors are working very closely with the teachers in their departments to align the curriculum so that there can be overlap. And a lot of times people don't understand that, and teachers sometimes even miss that there is great opportunity for interdisciplinary instruction in all subjects, but most especially in our special subject areas. For example, dance is a very big component of art and visual and performing art standards. It's also in the physical education standards, movement. So where there's opportunity to do cross-disciplinary instruction, the directors and the teachers on the curriculum committees are looking for that. I know Mr. Graziano is meeting with his art and music departments and at the elementary level and the principals, and they're talking about ways in which we can possibly repurpose or redesign some of our current stipend positions, like our club positions, extracurriculars at the elementary level, to see if there's a way that we can incorporate more arts and music into those extracurricular activities. So that's something that they're also working on. And in order to make this all work, we had to actually redesign the day as well, the school day, because there are some district initiatives that we're implementing this year that we started last year as well, like social emotional learning, like the responsive classroom that we've had people come in and talk to the group about for the last year and a half. And those all need time. We also recognize while we were doing this towards the latter end of this project, quite honestly, like in February and March, especially in March, we realized that we needed to be really realistic about the guidelines that we give teachers for how they plan their day and dedicate their time, in that when we come back, hopefully in September into our brick and mortar schools, there's going to be extended time that's going to be needed for transitioning between subjects, between classes, between lunch, between PE, between recess, for students to do personal hygiene, hand washing, those kinds of things. That all takes time out of the day. And the reality is we have about a 6-hour day, and about 3.5 hours are dedicated to actual instruction of content. And the other 2.5 hours are pretty much recess, lunch, transitions between classes, and also time for enrichment, intervention, and those kinds of personalized learning opportunities. So again, we can't extend the school day. There was more put on the plate for the teachers to implement from the state and also from our own district initiatives, because shifting important, in where we put importance. And so we had to do some realignment, the principals and the directors, to figure out how to make that all work like a puzzle. And it's, very interconnected.
Thank you. And we had just one question. Will recess remain intact? It sounds like that answer is yes.
Yeah, that's required by law. That's part of the 20 minutes a day that students, a minimum of 20 minutes that the students receive.
Okay. All right.
Margie, I have a question. I'm sorry, it's Amanda.
Sure.
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, how many hours a day are these elementary students going to be staring at computer screens now? Because that's a major concern, especially for incoming kindergartners. I mean, to add a computer literacy program and then they're using Chromebooks and all kinds of other things throughout the day. I mean, realistically, how many hours a day are these kids going to be staring at a computer screen?
So my experience and walking in and out of classrooms is students aren't traditionally sitting in a desk staring at a computer screen. The computers, the devices are used to support learning. So as needed, especially at the elementary level, I would say that's true. If they're in center activities and there's an activity that the students can participate in that can be digitalized, for lack of a better word, then it may, centers are usually 10 to 15-minute rotations. So I'll walk you through like a typical math period. So say there's 60 minutes of a math lesson. The first 10 or 15 is usually a whole group instruction, some form of direct instruction, introducing what the skill is that they're going to be learning that day. Then they usually do about a 30 to 40 minutes of rotating through centers, 10 to 15 minutes each. One of them may be, something that's on a computer. There's usually a hands-on center. There's usually time with the teacher for either enrichment or intervention with the skill. So in that 60-minute math lesson, there may be 10 minutes where the student may be at a center, if it's their day to be at that center, where there happens to be some sort of online activity. And it's usually some form of gamified experience. They're manipulating information or they're working with a skill that has been gamified. So in that 60-minute block, like I said, there might be 10 minutes where one of their center activities may be on the computer. In literacy, out of the 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours that the students spend doing reading, writing, phonics, foundations work, shared reading, the bulk of it, and in Reader's Workshop, unless you have a Kindle and you brought a Kindle in from home and the book you're reading is on the Kindle, most of it is hard copy text and novels that the students are engaged with. So again, they're doing like a 10 to 20 minute mini lesson with the teacher, then they're breaking off and they're usually doing either their book club or their independent reading. Again, the only time they would be in front of a computer for that would be if they're using a Kindle. Even if there are center activities, sometimes they'll do like Spelling City, something like that. Again, it's usually like a gamified, but it might be one activity within the rotation, maybe two, but there's usually not enough devices to accommodate that, especially at the K1 and 2 level for every student. They share them at that level typically right now. And then they're, the conferencing with the teacher, or they're doing guided reading, and that's with leveled literature. So again, unless they're reading a text that's on a Kindle, or they're using a text to practice, maybe it's like practicing fluency and they're using reading A to Z, which is what Hope was referring to, sometimes the online books. It's typically hard copy, print, and discussion, either with the teacher or with their peers. For writing, by the time they get to second, third, usually more third, fourth, and fifth grade, if they're going to publish and they start to type their piece into, sometimes they transfer it in digital form, then they may be using the computer. Science and social studies is much more hands-on. It's usually labs. Sometimes they're using the computer to record information, to document information in the labs, their data results from their science experiment. And the computer science course, that will be half a year, one out of every 6 day rotation for 40 minutes. And that's not all just computer-based either. Again, if they're learning computer science and the engineering principles, it may not be necessarily computers. So I know that there's a perception, I've heard that there's a perception that the students are in front of the computers a lot. It's usually in the form, again, of if there's 1 or 2 center activities within math or the literacy block, that they're engaging in some sort of activity. Other than that, again, unless they're reading a book online, most of the time the students are either in conversation, discussion, independent reading, or hands-on activities, is my experience, and having lived in an elementary school for many years as a principal and walking in and out of classrooms.
Okay. We have 2 questions in the chat. One from Heather. Could the WIN period, W-I-N period, be described? I'm not sure what that is. And then one from Rachel, where she asks, is there enough physical space in the schools for each class to have PE 4 times every 6 days, especially on days when they can't go outside due to weather or temperature, and an understanding that the APRs are used for lunch for a big chunk of the middle of each day? And are there any other states that have a mandate for PE time that is as much or more than this new New Jersey mandate?
So I'll take the last one. I'm not sure about other states. I wouldn't be able to speak to that. In terms of physical space, the key to remember is that it's health and physical education instruction. If you look at the comprehensive health and PE standards that I believe, Chris, are the standards hyperlinked to our article that we pushed out that's on the agenda?
Yes.
So if you view the comprehensive health and PE standards that are hyperlinked to our article, that I think is attached also to this agenda, you'll see that I would say more than half actually of those standards are in health. And that's been the big push by the state in releasing these new comprehensive health and PE standards over the last couple months. It's a greater emphasis on mental, social, emotional health and well-being, and as well as safety. Of course, there's drug and alcohol instruction, and personal, care. So it's not that all 4 days students are in the APR, because when there's health instruction, that's in the classroom. So the principals are working on that. Yes, in some of our elementary schools, it's much more challenging, where we have limited APRs that can only accommodate 1 class at a time. Schools like Navesink come to mind. River Plaza is challenging. Fort Monmouth definitely would have been a challenge. It's not an issue. Schools like New Monmouth and Nut Swamp and Lincroft, where we have the larger APRs, they can schedule 2 classes at a time. And that's typically what, you know, most districts and what we have actually already been doing in our larger schools. I'm trying to think back to the points that were in, let me pull up the other part of that question.
Leonardo, very challenging.
Leonardo is challenging, yes. Leonardo is challenging for many reasons. Its APR doubles pretty much as the space for all of its special subjects because they don't have any extra classroom dedicated or available to do music or art or world language. So oftentimes when you walk into the Leonardo APR during the typical day, you'll see a PE class happening on one side of the APR and there might be a world language class happening on the other. So that's—
Or art. Or art.
Yeah. If they can, okay, so we have enough space. I think I answered that one. And then the win time. So we kind of just formalized it with a name. The principals felt that was important. But we've been doing an intervention or an enrichment block in a lot of our schools over the last couple of years. Navesink comes to mind, River Plaza, Lincroft, and there were others, but those are the ones that first came to my mind. They've been dedicating a block of time of at least 20 to 30 minutes in the day or throughout the day for students to get engage in either intervention with the reading development or the math specialist or their own classroom teacher, enrichment. And this year, the last 2 years, you know, it's been more formalized with G&T instruction, which now the law goes into effect in September that all districts must enact. And as well as working on their own personalized learning goals. So it may be a student, you know, has need to address certain math standards or certain writing or reading standards, and they have extra time to do that. It's also a time when students traditionally will work on their Spark projects or any other ongoing projects that they have maybe with class with their peers. So we've kind of just formalized it and given it a name. A lot of other districts around the state are moving with that. It's a name. What I Need Now is an acronym that a lot of districts have picked up on. We were actually already using it in some of our schools. They were calling it that for the last 2 years. And when the principals talked, they thought that was an appropriate thing to make sure that we have available for all students in every school. It's also a time where students who have IEPs can be pulled out for supplemental resource, or a teacher can push into the room, do supplemental resource to work on specific goals or objectives in their IEPs. It's a time if a student is scheduled to receive some form of dyslexia, instruction to address dyslexia, either through Wilson or Project Read, that can be scheduled. And of course, it's not going to be perfect for every student, you know, where there's limited times in the day when the class can be scheduled, you know, where no other formal instruction's happening, but the principals and the teachers are going to do their best to try to make sure that that's the time when students are either getting supplemental resource instruction or G&T or intervention. Again, it's going to depend on the numbers of students in the class and when it can be scheduled, because what we're really trying to do is promote inclusion for all students, including our ESL learners, our special ed students, our Title I, you know, intervention students who need a supplemental resource support. We don't want them being pulled out during traditional instruction. And in the past, oftentimes that had to happen. That's to their great disadvantage when they have to leave the room when initial instruction is being delivered. It doesn't help close their gaps. And in fact, it often widens them. So we're really just working more towards having a more fluid and flexible schedule that prevents that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more questions for Kim before we move on to Mrs. Walker and virtual celebrations? Okay, Mrs. Walker.
Good morning, everybody. Right now, our principals are working with students to come up with a new plan for graduation, our high school students, that meet their expectations, but also aligns with the NJDOE guidelines. Last week, we received those guidelines, and we were really disappointed to see that none of the restrictions were loosened up at all. Everything that had been in place prior to Governor Murphy saying that in-person graduations would be possible, were still in place. We had hoped, after hearing about, Governor Murphy's announcement, that we would be able to hold a more traditional graduation on our football fields, even if we had to split the class and do 2 or 3 or 4 ceremonies per school using social distancing protocols. In fact, the principals had started thinking about it. They were identifying the equipment that they needed. They actually found out that many of the rental companies and the photography companies had laid off a lot of their workers, or sometimes all of their workers, and couldn't supply anything because of a lack of business, because nobody's having weddings, nobody's having graduations, nobody's having parties. So they had started looking into that. And when we got the new guidance, it still required that we stay within the limits of gathering that is in place at the time. And right now it's 25 people. So that includes everybody present. So it would include the students, it would include any parents, it would include administration, the nurse that we need to have present, the security. And 25 is just a really low number when you have about 750 graduates. And then you have to have the auxiliary people, there on site also. So, there was also a new stipulation that no in-person ceremonies could be held before July 6th. And we had planned a component of our graduation. There was a virtual component, and then there was a component where students would come on site individually and receive a diploma and have a photograph taken. And we were planning that for actually this week, I think. It was in June, first week in June. We had to change that. We changed it to July 6th. But we got feedback from the students and parents that was not favorable. So we're working to revise that by working with the students. Yesterday, Dr. Cartier and Mr. Kirkpatrick met virtually with their student leaders. And this is basically what they came up with, some of the ideas. Most of the students from both schools felt strongly with continuing the plan for a virtual ceremony on June 18th. Then they wanted it followed by some modified ceremony in August. They thought that waiting till August would provide the best chance for the current restrictions to be relaxed, and also, so that we could have something on the football fields with their classmates. They knew that this would, I just got a notice that my internet is unstable, so I'm hoping you can hear me. You can't hear me.
We can hear you.
We can.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can. We can hear you and see you. Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay. Thank you. Okay. The students understood that there would have to be multiple groups, multiple ceremonies with small groups of students, but their main focus was that they could graduate or have some kind of ceremony, even if it was just with 10 or 15 of their, classmates, just so that they could be with their students. That was their friends and, the people they've gone to school with for the last 12, 13 years. That was most important to them. An additional idea that they presented was some type of drive-by ceremony or celebration. But again, that still requires anybody out of their car. So if they wanted to have their teacher standing outside, those teachers would still have to abide by, anybody outside would have to abide by the 25 limit, which really wasn't that favorable to the students. They wanted their full faculty there. At High School South, they also suggested keeping the opportunity that we had set up for the pictures in July to continue to happen. They said some students wouldn't be available in August if we did have a ceremony, so that would be nice for them, and they would have liked their picture in their cap and gown also. Okay, our next step is for today for the principals to meet. They're going to meet at 1 o'clock today and create a survey based on what they heard from their students yesterday. That survey will go out to all students so that everybody in the graduating class will have a voice. Once they get those survey results back, they're going to look at revising graduation plans and then communicate it out to the community. We also have to submit that plan to the state. That's a new requirement that the state wants to see what our plans are. So we do have to make sure that we're doing everything within the guidelines. And for middle school, the principals are still planning virtual ceremonies, but they're going to talk to their parent organizations about it this week. But high schools really are the priority at this time, and there may be a lot of separate ceremonies that we have. Maybe we're thinking probably if the restrictions aren't lowered in terms of, actually raised in terms of the gatherings, we're going to have about 40 or more separate ceremonies. So, so middle schools right now are still virtual. Are any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions for Mrs. Walker regarding virtual celebrations?
Can you guys hear me? This is Rachel Konopka.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I know that middle and high school are obviously the priorities. I have a 5th grader at Nut Swamp who's graduating, and I recognize that the district doesn't want to necessarily allow for each school to do their own thing because you want to have fairness and equality for all the 5th graders, but it seems opportunity to try to do something simple that would be completely within the guidelines that Governor Murphy has put out and still give these kids one last chance to just like wave at their teachers and do like a drive-by through the parking lot or something. I haven't spoken to anybody at Nut Swamp or even the PTA about this. I know I'm hearing rumblings from parents like, I wish we could do something. Is there any opportunity for the 5th grade parents to work with their principals to try to work something out, just to enable like a drive-by for a half an hour, like a birthday parade essentially, to go through the parking lot, wave at their teachers, not get out, not stop, none of that, but just to get a chance to have something that they can do? I know like my daughter and many of her classmates, they're really bummed out. And I know we're all in a weird state, but from a social, emotional wellness perspective, to give them some closure on their elementary experience, I feel like it would be really valuable. And I recognize how challenging this is. And thank you guys for all you're trying to do. I know the standards are changing every day with what we can and can't do. So I realize it's a big ask, but for my daughter and her classmates, I feel like I have to ask it.
Actually, yesterday, Pam mentioned that to me, and that we're going to begin the process of having those discussions about the possibility, first with our board attorney, with the potential liability, even if we are following the social distancing guidelines, since there are, automobiles involved and it's outside of, the regular school duties and responsibilities and all those kind of things. So we are beginning the process to look into it and have a discussion with our elementary principals. To this point, we have told elementary principals that it was not the expectation of our school district that our staff members would be participating in virtual parades or anything of that nature. I don't know, Mary Ellen, if there's anything else you want to add.
No, we the principals really wanted consistency between the schools. You can imagine the problems that would cause, if there was a huge celebration somewhere and not so huge somewhere else. Also, we like to keep a hierarchy of high school being, the pinnacle, middle school being the next big step, and then elementary. So we really don't want elementary to, I hate to use the word, but outshine middle school. So this is a discussion that we actually started yesterday in our, we had a principals meeting, and about graduations and promotion ceremonies that we're going to continue to discuss. I think every school is going to move forward with their virtual, but we still have the summer to continue our discussions and to see if the restrictions are eased a little bit, if the number in the gatherings go up, that will make it much easier for us to be able to have these events. At an elementary, I understand that there's only so many 5th grade teachers, or really only so many teachers in the building. They could probably easily have a drive-by with 25 staff members standing out there, and that would be meaningful. But in a middle school like Thompson, to only have 25 staff members standing outside would kind of be disappointing, as the students drove by thinking, wow, only 25 staff members came out to see us. Maybe not really understanding that that is all that could be there. So we're just trying to keep everything in perspective, and as we're going into phase 2. So right now there's been no change in the 25 gathering, but it pretty soon will be in phase 2. Maybe they will lift that, and maybe there'll be more opportunity for us to think outside the box and create something for our students, but that keeps in line with that hierarchy.
We do have a question.
Hi.
Real quick, we have a statement in the chat. Majority of the Bayshore students are not interested in an August graduation with all the modifications. Several parents of special education children have expressed that their children are struggling with closure. And Bayshore is unique since our students are split. So for many, this is really goodbye for them.
Mhm.
So that was just shared in the chat. And we had another question. Can groups of 25 teachers stand in different places around the school property?
Now, unfortunately, the way it's worded, you know, that it's been explained to us, it's 25 people total. And that sentiment, some of even our high school students are saying, we just want closure. We want something now. And that's one of the reasons that we feel we probably will go through with a virtual and then work to have something, you know, a little bit more later on in August, if that's what students want. But we are hearing that, you know, we don't want to hold out for people who may not even be here. There's people going into the military that will be leaving during the summer. So, I mean, this is complicated. It would be so much easier and so much better if we could just do our graduations, but we have to work within the guidelines and try to meet the needs of all the students. So we're trying.
Yeah, I just want to say, part of the reason, if you attended our last board meeting or you're at that last board meeting, when we were looking, we did get some pushback on an August graduation because, you know, the principals were hearing from the school community that they didn't want to wait that long. That's why we moved back to that July time frame. The other thing that we're concerned from the guidance departments, that there were colleges and universities like Notre Dame and others that were moving their start dates earlier instead of the end of August to the beginning of August, so that they could get ahead of the second wave, if you will, and have a longer break over the winter recess starting at Thanksgiving. So the fear was that more students wouldn't be able to participate. And the other thing I think, and my talking with the students yesterday and just a lot of emails that are coming in to me, a lot of people really don't understand that 25 guideline. They don't understand that really when you come down to a possible celebration experience, it would really only be 2 families at a time, because you still have the nurse, you still have the administration, you still have the security people. Everyone counts in 25. And there is only one group of 25. It's not, well, 25 standing over here and 25 standing over here. If they were all social distancing, could we do it? And I think the other thing for this is that people see, you know, with parks opening and people going back to the beaches, they see larger groups being able to spread out and social distance. And the hope was that something like that could happen for graduation. And I think that's why we were so surprised at the end of May that the stipulations for this in-person ceremony were really no different than they were in the beginning of May when we were saying we couldn't do that. It was just the recognition that with 25 people at a place, you could do some form of celebration. But as already pointed out, you know, even with just our 2 high schools, you're talking about 91 potential gatherings to try to make that happen or more, you know. So
Yeah, and
that's something we have to keep in mind.
And you know, what our students had said, this was so loud and clear. It wasn't about the speeches, it wasn't about the traditional elements of the ceremony. You know, that's nice, and it would be really good if they could just do that virtually. They just wanted to have some kind of celebration gathering. If it was just walking up on the stage and getting their diploma with their classmates, even if it was just a few classmates. And I think that kind of echoes what Rachel was saying. You know, students just want to see each other. They want to see their teachers. The high school, if we do in person, will not be able to see their teachers because of the class size. But, you know, elementary and high school students are different, but they just want to connect again for one last time. And so, you know, that's what we're going to reach out to the high school students and see if we can make happen in August. And we're, you know, crossing our fingers that maybe some of these gathering totals will increase.
Okay,
I'd like to.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I'd
go
like
ahead.
to answer the question in the chat from Denise Thompson. Are you talking to other districts, Red Bank Regional? I know yes, we are. We meet twice a week. Our last conversation with all superintendents of Monmouth County was last Friday. I know that there are districts that have things on their website, RBC, RFH, where they're planned in-person regular graduations. Raritan High School students have mentioned that to us. As a matter of fact, there was a girl yesterday, a young lady yesterday, who's going to be a graduate of RBC, who was at the event. She's saying, you know, I don't know why you guys can't do this because we're doing this at RBC. Well, I don't know how that they can do that at RBC based on the guidelines we're getting from the State Department of Education, from the governor's office. I don't know how they can do that. I think what you're seeing there is they have potential dates in case the guidelines get lessened. How realistic is it that we're going to go from a gathering of 25 to a gathering of an entire senior class? You know, I don't want to comment on that because, you know, people say, well, things are opening up very quickly. And I think that's why after talking to the students that we said, okay, maybe then, even though we had received feedback as recently as our last board meeting, you know, where people were saying, just make a decision and make it now. And that was kind of our mindset on why we did what we did. But in hindsight, that our students really needed to hang on to that possibility. And that's why we went with the August date to begin with, because August gives us the best opportunity to do that, right? Because the further out we could put it, we were just concerned with all of a sudden the universities taking that step where they're saying, okay, instead of starting at the end of August, we're going to start in the beginning of August. And the disappointment of students thinking that they wanted closure, you know? So that's one. Is there another one we didn't get to, Margie?
Yes, there's one from Heather. My concern is at the elementary level and consistency. I too have a 5th grader and would love to see them receive some sort of closure, but for some schools, a drive-by would not be logistically feasible. We cannot shut down Newman Springs Road in Lincroft to filter families through the small U at the school.
Yes, and so, yeah, those were definitely things that were discussed by the principal. So if the gathering sizes are increased, you know, there's always possibility of doing something different at a different school, so long as it's along the same level. But right now, it just seems like we couldn't be equitable, is basically what she's saying.
You know,
I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. George had said about the other schools too. One of the new requirements of the guidelines, which by the way, if you go to the website, Dr. George's letter from Saturday night, I believe it's the 30th, has a link to those guidelines if you want to see them. They're pretty extensive. But one of the new requirements is that between June 5th and at least 7 days before your ceremony, you have to report to the state what you're doing. So I just can't imagine that you can report to the state that you're having a full in-person graduation. It's you know, it baffles me.
Yeah.
Well,
You get away with it.
the county superintendents that told us absolutely we could not. And we were trying to push him. Now, I want to make this clear. There's not one superintendent or one school district that's pushing harder than the others. From my perspective, I always am very concerned about trying to point the finger at the State Department of Education or the governor or the commissioner or the county superintendent why things are the way they are. Because for kids, I think it creates further unrest and it creates challenges, you know, in believing in the leadership and elected officials and it hurts hope. And in this time when there's so much social and emotional upheaval, we try to work within, you know, the guidelines that are put before us and come up with the best plan possible for our students. But would we like the opportunity for our elementary students to say goodbye and get closure? Absolutely. Did I hear that today? I absolutely did. And, you know, I'll bring that back to the principals and we'll discuss it. I'll also bring it to our board attorney. We'll discuss what those possibilities are, what it could look like. And we also have to look very closely at, the liabilities and the challenges. And then we'll come out as asked with one unified proposal that everybody could follow. We are heartbroken for the loss of experiences for all our students. Doesn't matter whether it's the elementary spring concerts or band concerts or co-curricular activities in the middle school or the high schools, or my heart breaks hardest for our seniors. I have a senior myself, a senior in college, and I know how tough that is, but I think senior in high school is even, we all know how near and dear that experience is to our hearts. So we want to do more. We absolutely, the high school administrations, along with Mrs. Walker and Mr. Ranella, are trying so hard to come up with the best possible plan to make this special. As someone who lived through a virtual college graduation with my daughter, it was saddening. It was disappointing, honestly. Even though they did a great job, they really did. They did the best job they could. But we crave those traditional experiences, and we're going to try to, provide the closest we can to those experiences.
Okay, if there's no other questions on this topic, we'll move on to the next topic, which is what school could look like in September if we're all allowed to go back to brick and mortar.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Gallagher's on this phone call, Mrs. Walker's on this phone call, Mrs. Pekas, Dr. Tiedemann, I said Miss Gallagher, but I meant Mrs. Doherty, I apologize. We all have been thinking an awful lot about this. And not only that, but I'm on a reopening committee that was put together by the Department of Education. And there's so many things that we are discussing and that we are talking about, right? Like that could be significantly more expensive. For example, what we could do for a brick and mortar experience, and at the same time, what are the state expectations going to be to virtual for guidelines for parents who are concerned based on the continuing pandemic about bringing their children back in that environment? How do we know, and Dr. Tiedemann's on here, Mrs. Walker, we can talk a lot about this. What can we do as it relates to related services and providing those services for our special education students? So there's a lot of unknowns for us too right now as it relates to the budgets, right? I know that everybody has heard from the governor last week that we're facing a $10 billion deficit in the 19-20 budget. And what is that going to mean as it relates to our budget moving forward? A budget that has been so significantly impacted by state aid cuts and continues to face enrollment challenges with declining enrollment. So there's a lot of things that we're continually looking at, different scenarios. We need to spend a significant amount of time this summer looking at our schedules, what they look like in brick and mortar, what they would look like if there was a combination of those two things. What are the additional driving costs that are going to come online for testing? What that looks like when people test positive? How is it going to impact the state? We've asked our committee, challenged the state to really revisit the attendance policy for the state. That can no longer, the attendance policy that was in place with a finite number of days that you can miss to receive credit is outdated now based on this pandemic and our latest situation. So there's a lot of things that we're thinking about. I'll stop there. I don't know, Mrs. Doherty, if you want to talk about any of the other financial drivers. We still don't know. Transportation, more than a $10 million driver for us in our budget. We still don't know what our responsibility is going to be, even to pay those costs, even though we weren't providing those services but we're still waiting for the state on those mandates. Mrs. Doherty, anything I'm missing or you want to add in on?
No, I think you covered everything, Dr. George.
Thank you. Mrs. Walker or Ms. Gallagher?
The only thing that I would add to that is that, you know, in terms of, I know for parents and for us too, but you know, you're sending your child into the school now after 6 months being out for a pandemic, and it's, you know, it's a little nerve-wracking. Are your children going to be safe? You know, are they going to get sick? So that is probably that top priority here. And in fact, we had we have a nurses meeting with our head nurses every Tuesday. So we had one planned for this morning, and right before it was supposed to start, one of our head nurses, Eileen Gavin, she's on the state committee in terms of re-entry for health. Like Dr. George is on a different committee. She's there for health and safety of students. She's like, there was an emergency meeting. I just got a call. I have to go to this NJDOE meeting. So we're anxiously awaiting Mr. Ranella and I to speak with her after she gets out of the meeting to find out what that was all about. But we do have a voice, and we are hearing, you know, the things that are being discussed there in terms of safety for students. There's nothing written in stone yet, so we really don't have a solid plan. But you know, we're formulating ideas on how we could do things, and we are on top of it as much as we can be without the state actually providing. You know, they haven't finished up determining the guidance, so as soon as we get that, you know, we'll be able to discuss it in detail with our community.
There is a question in the chat. Has there been discussion about looking at the curriculum for next year? While our teachers are doing a great job this year, unfortunately, our kids are most likely going to be behind next year.
Yeah, I was just waiting for Mrs. Walker to finish talking, and I was going to jump in from, when it comes to curriculum, we have been talking for many weeks already, preparing for the fact that it is inevitable, agreed, that there will be some sort of lasting, you know, repercussions for the fact that students have been out of the classroom for an extended period of time. We all agree that the teachers have been doing a great job in Middletown of trying to sustain virtual instruction, but it's not the same. No one is pretending to believe it's the same type of instruction that students would typically receive in the classroom. You know, it's going to be an extended period of time that they now will not have been receiving, you know, face-to-face direct instruction or interaction with their peers. We've had to condense and compact our current curriculum to target essential skills. So, and the other thing is we don't have formalized state assessments now to kind of help drive some of our decision-making, but we have enhanced our local assessments to make sure that we have information about our students and where they stand with the skills and concepts they need to master year over year. We have been very vocal in pressing the Department of Education to revisit their end of year and grade level expectations. That's not going to be a one-year fix. We've been very forceful in communicating that and our opinions on that to the State Department of Education. They need to look at this long-term. You are not going to close the inevitable gaps that are going to exist in all forms of learners, one way or another, in a few months. We can try to further solidify foundational skills, skills that students need to build on to learn new skills as best as we can when we start next year. But there's going to be an extended period of time where we're going to have to address and close gaps for students that are now there because of this situation that may not have been there otherwise. So we already are talking about, you know, we're waiting for guidance from the state. Obviously, again, we have to adhere to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. We don't have a choice in that. We're hoping that the state is going to be cognizant and realistic about what those expectations have to be, again, year over year for students, and adjust them. But we know that we're going to have to adjust our district curriculum and our teaching practices, and probably even the way that we, you know, schedule students moving forward to meet each of their needs. So we are looking at, we're talking to a couple of our different partners like Linkit in terms of what our best approach is from their experience, and in their talking and they're speaking with other districts. The funny thing is, as usual, I'm just going to say this, and this is meant as a true testament to the district, not to any individual. This is a testament to Middletown. Inevitably, every call we get on and we say, like, what are other districts doing? What are they thinking? The answer we get is, well, they're actually waiting to see what Middletown's going to do. They would like to see what Middletown is thinking. So we seem to be a place that other people look for guidance. So, last week we were on the call with a couple different of our partners, and we talked about how we can best get snapshots of students in real time of where they stand in their learning profiles. We're developing plans for that for the fall, and adjusting what we typically would do for formative and summative assessing of students, because that's really the only way we know for sure where the needs exist for every individual. Otherwise, you're guessing, and we don't want to guess. We want to get it right. We want to know where students stand, and we want to address their needs right down to the individual learner. So that is something that we're looking at. We are preparing for staffing and schedules at all levels as if we are going to be back in the schools, 100% brick and mortar instruction as we normally would. But we are very cognizant of the fact that we may have to pivot at a moment's notice, and the principals and the directors are already thinking about what those pivots may be, so that we can be ahead of that and be forward thinking and trying to anticipate what those changes may look like. I also just want to address another thing. As much as we are student-centered, and we are a student-centered district, that is for sure, we also have to take into account that to make this organization run, it requires adults. It requires, human beings, adults, to man those classrooms, to man the hallways, to man the kitchen, to man the offices. And those adults come with also, unique health needs and concerns. And the state has been very clear, the federal government has been very clear that all employers must recognize that some of their employees may be at higher risk. And we have to think of that as well. How are we going to execute our mission here and our vision as a district, knowing that our workforce may also be compromised, may be at risk. And therefore, and the federal government and the state government has told all employers, we must be mindful of that, and we have to have plans in place to modify or accommodate adults, workers who may be, may not be able to fulfill their normal work obligations, if they are in an at-risk category. So that's something that we're also mindful of and in our planning.
Just a question that I've had. If they do go forward with social distancing and masks and all this other stuff with the young kids, how are you going to deal with the physical constraints of the building if you have to take a class of, say, 25 kids and now find room for them to be 6 feet distant from each other in order to, I mean, we're kind of many students, places are at capacity now. Do you have any insight into how you're going to deal with the physical constraints of the buildings, as far as how the kids are going to be socially distant and all the nuances that go along with that kind of thing?
We have many meetings throughout the week with our principals and our directors, and that is a constant topic that comes up. The principals are thinking about what that organization of classroom space and common space would look like. Unfortunately, until we get clearer guidance from exactly what those guidelines are that we have to operate in, where we can't make any definite plans. You might be, or not you personally, Margie, but a principal might be planning for, no more than, or at least 6 feet distance between students and their desks. Or are we planning for no more than X number of students in a class at any time? And those could be two very different scenarios. So, unfortunately, until we get clearer guidance from the state, in terms of what those guidelines or restrictions are going to be, it's hard to make any real plans. But yes, that is on our mind. We are thinking about it. We're thinking about different scenarios that we've been hearing out there, as speculation, and how we would, again, I'll use that word pivot, because that's what we're looking at. Like you have an idea of how you think you're moving forward. But I think if we've learned anything the last couple of months, it's that within a moment's notice, that can change. and then you have to be ready to adapt. So the words we keep reinforcing with our administrative team is be open-minded, be flexible, and just stay fluid.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If there are any more questions on this topic, we'll move to Mrs. Tiedemann and maybe a brief discussion of how special education has been faring in the time of virtual learning. Mrs. Tiedemann?
Hi, sure. Everyone can hear me? Because I was muted for a bit.
Yes,
So,
we can hear you.
We are getting a lot of positive feedback. I think the virtual services are going well. Once related services were implemented, and that took place quite a while ago. I think we were able to provide a lot more support and direct instruction to the students. We have quite a number of paraprofessionals working one-to-one with students, contacting parents, and working in a group setting. And actually, I have to say that seems to be even going better than what I expected it possibly could be, because at first we thought, how is this going to work? How is this support really going to be so beneficial to the students? But when I reach out to teachers and say, how's it going? They are delighted with the support of the paraprofessionals. The paraprofessionals are bordering on technological experts at this point. They are running their own Google groups and jumping in and out with kids and pulling kids aside virtually. So everything I hear is that it is going very well. Of course, it would never be able to compare to our one-to-one interactions with our students, but overall, I don't know if you're hearing differently, but I am getting a lot of positive feedback.
Terrific. That's wonderful. Are there any questions for Mrs. Tiedemann about virtual learning and special education?
Well, we might want to take this opportunity to also have Ms. Tiedemann talk about the summer program, because
Right.
So our ESY will be virtual. That is based on a directive from the county superintendent to make sure that we keep our kids safe and healthy. So we are going to be giving the staff, the parents, the kids a little bit of a break by not starting our ESY until July 22nd. We did extend it from the typical 4 days a week to 5 days a week, and it will run through August 20th, taking us hopefully not too far from the start of being reunited as much as possible and seeing the kids. We will be doing para support, related services, special reading programs, IEPs, whatever is in the IEP that the student has been getting, that the IEP team has determined they need during the summer. All of that will be continued during the 5 weeks of the ESY program, 4 weeks.
All right, that's terrific. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions for Mrs. Tiedemann about either the ESY program this summer or special education and how it's going in virtual learning? If not, we'll move on to Heather, Dr. Safford, and Middletown Friends of Diverse Learners.
Hi, thank you. Well, first of all, I will save my questions for Dr. Tiedemann to our meeting on Thursday. But I wanted to thank the district for moving forward with and formalizing the WIN. We see this as a really important step that we needed to facilitate increased inclusion. And so we think this is going to be really beneficial, to students in general for this coming fall. And we're glad to see this moving forward despite our current circumstances. So again, thank you for making that happen. And we're excited to learn more about plans to be increasing inclusion. So I want to mention our, as it's in the agenda, we have a couple meetings coming up. This Wednesday, we're having a special meeting to be talking about specifically about the strategic planning goals and objectives and other district concerns like selecting new superintendent, as well as our governance and kind of future for MTFDL going forward. So we really encourage parents to attend that meeting online, reach out to us to get an invite, and encourage more parents to get involved and become part of the MTFDL group. And then we are, because there's just so much happening right now, we're also having a parent meeting as scheduled on June 9th. So again, that one will be, talking about individual concerns and, the news that we get from our administration meeting on Thursday as well. So we encourage parents to also, attend both meetings. We've continued to meet virtually with parents, which has been beneficial. And we too have heard a lot of, positive feedback from parents and a lot of appreciation for the efforts of staff and teachers, really trying to go out of their way to help our kids. We also have done a couple online parent surveys, and we're still kind of compiling the results of those. So we want parents to know that we sent out a survey on Friday, and hope to get more feedback from parents on that. So far, there's a real wide range of student needs and demands on parents as well. And so we see parents having different kinds of issues depending on their student and their work and other family demands. We've definitely seen an evolution in the virtual instruction. And overall, I think, we're fortunate to be in Middletown, which had a really strong technology program put in place. So that transition overall went relatively smoothly, especially when we hear what's happening, in other schools in the state and, even other states like, Massachusetts. I heard, students were out of work, didn't have anything to do for 2 weeks, where, we kind of transitioned right in and had some structure for our students. And so I think there's a lot of important feedback there. I hope that if we do find out we have to go back to some kind of online learning, that there is a chance for this group to provide some feedback on the virtual learning instruction plan that was put together. I think that was helpful for kind of getting us all on the same page in terms of what to expect from our teachers. And again, we might want to kind of relook at that and kind of get feedback from students and parents to figure out how can we do things better going forward in the event that we do go back to online learning, whether it's in the fall or, sometime over the winter. And again, I thought I just mentioned that, this kind of brings up, well, what is direct instruction? What does that look like? We've heard different things from different parents in terms of what they're getting in terms of their general education support. Some people are getting a lot of Zoom live instructions. Other parents are not seeing the equivalent in terms of the live interactions. And, we've heard from a lot of parents that, those social opportunities have been really valuable for their students when they get them. And a lot of parents would like to be seeing more social interaction, in the online setting if possible. And I'm just trying to think, there was a advocate letter that was sent to the state. And I think it's important that we recognize this is ongoing statewide discussion in terms of, what does instruction look like? And, for both general ed and special education. And I think we do need more guidelines too from the state, so there is more consistency from district to district. Again, we're lucky to be here, where the teachers are doing, and we have the technical capability to make sure everybody has a computer at home. So I just kind of want to, put that on everybody's radar, and hopefully we can continue having more discussions on those, issues going forward.
All right, terrific.
If I could just respond to Dr. Seifert there. First of all, thank you for that resource, Dr. Seifert. That was a great resource. We're going to be sharing that with our administrative team. I did review it. Margie sent that to me yesterday, or you did. I'm not sure which, but I reviewed it, and we're going to be reviewing that with our administrative team. There is an expectation for a live component to our lessons on a regular basis as part of our schedules for elementary, middle, and high school. And, that's something that has been communicated to us from time to time. We've worked directly with building principals where that's come up to make sure that we are delivering that consistent level of instruction. as the resource you provided points out, that equity is a real challenge in this environment. You know, equity for regular education, special educations, students, consistent implementation of best practice learning, and that live instruction. We have that expectation for all of our staff. You know, as a district, you know, we continue to employ our paraprofessionals, all of our staff, with the expectation that we were going to find ways to get them to work directly with our students. That's why we, as you know very well, we started providing whatever related services parents had asked us for that we could collaborate and agree would be an added educational benefit, even if it meant we were going to have to duplicate those services because they didn't meet with the fidelity we needed to actually do justice to the minutes. We might have to duplicate some of those minutes moving forward. We've been committed from that from the very beginning. So, you know, I think a lot of the information you share, just know that we share the same sentiment. Our expectation for that consistent implementation and that in-person is absolutely in place. We see our counselors, our nurses, it's not just our subject-specific teachers that are doing a great job with that. Our partnership with the YMCA, last month alone, they did 300 virtual counseling sessions for us, which was outstanding, on top of the work of all of our counselors and the daily work that they're doing every day, because we know socially and emotionally our students need so much more now. But that, it can't be in person, but that one-on-one virtual time is so important to all of us. Just know that. And when it's not happening, we see that as an inequity. We want to address that inequity because we want the consistent implementation.
Yes, and again, I think there's, you know, widespread appreciation for the efforts being made, and we look forward to talking to you more.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Well, are there any other questions for the administration before we wrap up?
Actually, if I can just ask a quick question, is there any plans to utilize the new digital structures that we have in place to supplement for specials next year, since we're going to be moving to essentially fewer instruction moments for Spanish, for language, art, music, those sorts of things? To supplement them.
Just to clarify, when you say in structures, just so that
Well,
I
I know
answer
on the
appropriately.
elementary level right now, you guys put in place Imagine Learning to help with the math and the ELA 2 days a week. So I know there are digital options out there. I'm wondering if the district is looking at a way to supplement the language, the art, the music instruction, not to replace it, but to supplement it, since they're going to be having less access to those specials over the course of the entire year now.
So I mentioned earlier that the directors and the curriculum committees of those different departments and areas will be looking at over the course of the next couple of months how we need to design our current curriculum and our units of study. I'm sure they're going to consider all options. The fact of the matter is, though, the length of the day is already very tight to get all of the learning standards implemented and taught for all of the subject areas, while also allowing for those non-academic times of personal hygiene, hand washing, recess, lunch, transitions, those kinds of things. So I don't know what their recommendations are going to be, but we're open to hearing them. Nothing was budgeted for this year in terms of, because with all those subscriptions comes a hefty price tag, I'm just going to be honest. We were able to implement Imagine Learning at no cost because the company was working with many districts in trying to fill their voids and their needs to supplement English language arts and mathematics learning during this very difficult time across the nation. That's just one company. There were many companies who made themselves available at no cost to do that. but subscriptions do come at a very high price tag for online learning tools. So that's something that I'm sure that as the curriculum committees look at I think what they really want to do is implement the schedule during the upcoming year, get a feel for what changes need to be made, so they can speak from experience, not hypothetical. And then as we look to develop our budget for next year, consider what other additional resources, to your point, Hope, may be necessary to augment instruction. I know one of the things, like I said earlier, that they are looking at is repurposing some of the stipend positions for the extracurriculars at the elementary level to think about how they could better incorporate the arts, both visual, performing, and digital arts, into some of those extracurricular activities.
Okay, thank
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, this brings us to the end of our PIC meetings. Obviously, the one we had at the beginning of the year is much different than the one we're having right now. But I want to thank everyone who's participated for their devotion. Thank you to the administration. And I want to take a moment to recognize Dr. George. He's been the only guiding light for me since we started, and I'm going to miss you very much. So best of luck. I hope everything is wonderful for you. You've been such an advocate for the kids, such an advocate for this organization, for this meeting group of parents, giving us the opportunity to have a voice. Is very unique. You've shown your dedication to it. I appreciate it. I appreciate you very much. I hope you have wonderful successes at Monmouth University. I look forward to my kids someday maybe seeing you in class if they get there. But I just want, I want to say thank you so much, and best of luck, Dr. George, and thank you for all you've done for us.
Right back at you, Margie. Thanks for all your leadership and making this happen, and always bringing to us all the important topics so that we can keep our community informed. I'm so grateful to your leadership and volunteerism and all your work that you've done during this time. Thank you.
Yes, but I just want to say thank you, Dr. George. Thank you for everything. Really, good luck. I hope it's good. I hope it's an excellent experience. You deserve it. You deserve every success. You really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
you. And everyone else have a wonderful summer. Hopefully we'll find out what's going to happen next year, and I'll keep you informed. If you know you're going to continue, please let me know if you're continuing with PIC. If you know who may be the new rep, please let me have that information over the summer so that we can start building the committee for next year as well.
Margie, thank you so much too for doing this another year. It's so much work, especially virtually. That's not what you signed up for.
Well, thank you to Chris.
I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, Chris Rotolo, without him, we would fall. So he's just been,
I agree.
Really, seriously. He's the founder of all of this. So thank you to Chris too for coming in and just making it seamless, no matter what we do. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, between this, the President's Council, and all the virtual PTA meetings, Chris, if we could write your employee evaluation, we just can't pay you enough. I really appreciate everything.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm always happy to help. So just reach out anytime.
Yes.
The principals were saying the same thing about Chris yesterday, because arranging their, your PFA and PTO meetings and how he's facilitated all that. So yes, thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the PIC meeting. Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Dr. George. I'll miss you. Be well, everyone. Have an excellent, safe summer, and I hope to see everybody's face in September and October when we get started again.
Thank you, Margie.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody. Be well.
Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.